Greetings. I greet you all in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. My name is Steve Blumfield, and this channel is Bible for All Nations. This channel is to give free discipleship teaching to people who are too poor to go to a Bible school. And I'm teaching on Matthew 24. I've covered the introduction, which is the rules of interpretation of Matthew 24. I've covered the Jesus talking to them, where he uses the word you. You will experience this. You will see this. This is going to happen to you. So that's the roadmap to the destruction of the temple. Now, the three questions that the disciples ask is, one, when will these things happen? In other words, the destruction of the temple. What will be the sign of your coming, and what will be the end of the age? And as I've explained before, Jesus is going through these in sequence. He's going through a roadmap from their experience, the disciples, through to the destruction of the temple, the church age, the coming of Christ, the end of the world, and finally the day of judgment. And it's in a simple sequence, like a string of pearls, like a story, Jesus giving this teaching. There's no parable here, because in the when he spoke to the crowds, he spoke in parables. But then afterwards, the disciples said to him, explain to us this parable. And then he sat down and he explained the parable in simple, easy to understand language. And so he's explaining to his disciples in simple, easy to understand language. But if you start in Daniel and Revelation, and you're going to get tangled up in a mess of confusion. But if you listen to this series, you're going to understand the second coming of Christ in a very simple and easily understood manner. So this is the third in the series, the destruction of the temple. Verse 15 of Matthew 24. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken about by the prophet of Daniel, in other words, the destruction of the temple was going to happen in their lifetimes. He probably pointed to them and said, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken about by the prophet Daniel. Now, to explain this, in Daniel predicted the coming of an Antichrist. That Antichrist was Antiochus Epiphanes, who went into Jerusalem, he went into the temple, and he sacrificed a pig in the Holy of Holies. Okay, so that was the abomination. Then after that came the desolation, where he murdered so many people in Jerusalem, and trying to force the Jews to not follow Yahweh, not follow the Mosaic law, but to be free and eat pigs and all kinds of things which they are not supposed to eat. So it was the abomination that causes desolation. So the abomination was the sacrifice of the pig, and then afterwards came the desolation. And now, under Jewish interpretation, events can repeat throughout history. So there are several antichrists in the Bible. One of them is this guy, Antiochus Epiphanes. But his friends called him Antiochus Epimanes, which means, Antiochus Epiphanes means the manifestation, Antiochus, the manifestation of God. In other words, he himself proclaimed himself as a Messiah figure. And then, but his friends said Antiochus Epimanes, Antiochus the madman, because he was psychotic. He was so crazed with power that he didn't mind killing I don't know how many people in Israel. So he says, when you, the disciples, see the abomination of desolation spoken about by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, Let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Now, in another passage, Jesus says, when you see armies surrounding Jerusalem, flee. So there's two phases. One, there's the phase of where the armies arrive and surround Jerusalem. Then the disciples must flee. The second phase is the city walls are breached. The guys come in, they start butchering, and he goes to the temple and he sacrifices. And Titus, who's the prince, he's the son of the Roman emperor. Titus goes into the Holy of Holies and he says, there is no God. So in the presence of God, he says there's no God. A man telling God there's no God. The holiest place in the world, Titus says, there is no God. So that was the abomination. The desolation, the abomination that causes desolation. The desolation came after that. Titus has been waging war for 3.5 years. Then after that, there was another 3.5 years where he went throughout Israel and he absolutely destroyed crops, pigs, cattle, goats, everything was destroyed, chasing these zealot guerrillas. Finally, on Masada, the last of the guerrillas gathered in Masada. And it was like a mountain like that. So what they did, these walls were very steep. What they did is they brought in soil and they made it easy to climb up to the top. And then when they got up to the top and they were about to get to the place where the zealots were, there was only a couple of hundred of them by that stage. Then the zealots all committed suicide. And then when the Romans came in, there was nobody alive. And so in Israel, even to this day, they say, remember Masada, remember Masada. Don't let the Gentiles come and rule you. Don't let them come into Israel and kill you. And so that's a rallying cry. So that took 3.5 years for all those zealots to be killed. So Jesus said, flee Jerusalem, flee Israel. And they did. The disciples scattered, the apostles scattered throughout to Rome, to Asia Minor, to North Africa, even to India. The apostles went there. And, and this helped the gospel to be spread throughout the world. The one who's on his housetop must not come down to take things of his house. The one who's in the field must not turn back to get his cloak. Woe to those who are pregnant who are nursing their babies in these days. Okay, Jesus is saying, look, you're going to be invaded. The walls are going to be breached. The enemy is going to come in. And he's even going to come into the Holy of Holies. So, and then what's going to happen is something so terrible that if you are pregnant, it's going to be a disaster. Pray that your flight might not happen in winter or on a Sabbath. So imagine you have been starving. You're nearly dead from starvation. And then Titus goes into the Holy of Holies, says there's no God. What are you going to do now? The natural thing is to wait in the city and wait to be fed, maybe by the Romans, or, you know, people will start bringing in food from the outside into the city. Jesus says, do not wait. Get out, because there's going to come a butchery after that. And then there's going to be more starvation. So the disciples and all the Christians, when the Roman army surrounded Jerusalem, they fled. But there were probably a few more that remained. And so they also fled. And Jesus said, it's urgent, guys. You've got to get out quickly. Don't delay. And so they got out. And even to this day, the Jews say that the Christians were chicken. The Christians wouldn't support Israel. And they are condemned to this very day. But Jesus said to them, you must flee. So thank you for listening to this. And the next one, we're going to go on to the church age, the time of the Gentiles. And this is the age which you and I are living in right now. God bless you and goodbye.